Hi guys, in this video I'm going to go over the date functions in Excel. They're real important. You need to know a bunch of these. They're real simple as well. Let's get started. But before we do, go to excelvbasql.com and watch all the videos that are already there. There's over 31 hours. Okay, so let's get started. So we're going to look at all these functions up here. All these functions that you see with the parentheses. These are all functions. We're going to go through them in this video. They're pretty easy. But before we do that, you need to know how Excel deals with dates. And Excel stores dates as numbers starting at the number 1. And the number 1 represents a date. It represents January 1st, 1900. So if I enter 1 here, I have this cell formatted as a date. I right clicked on it and went to format date over here. And when I do that, the number 1 comes up January 1st, 1900. And if I put the number 2 here, and then I go in here and right click and do format cells, and I go down to date and click OK, then I get January 2nd, 1900. So if I just format, if I just have, let's say I have numbers here, 3, 4, and I just keep drag these down, right? So now I get 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And if I format this, you're going to see that what happens is Excel converts that number to a date. So that's how Excel deals with dates. They're stored as numbers starting with the number 1, and the number 1 starts at January 1st, 1900. So what does that mean? That means you cannot have a date in Excel prior to that. Okay? And now once you have these dates, you can do things with it. Like you can go to January 1st, 1900, and you could add stuff to it. You could add 1000 to it. So what is this doing? It's taking the number 1 actually, because remember it's stored as a number. It's saying 1 plus 1000. That's going to add 1000 days to January 1st, 1900, and that comes out to September 27th, 1902. If I convert these to numbers, and I just go general, what you're going to see is here's the numbers 1 and 1001. And again, it should show you that although you see dates in cells, behind the scenes, way down in the code of Excel, there's a numbering system that sort of keeps track of dates. And it starts at the number 1 and it goes all the way up to, I think, 2 or 3 million. If you put 4 million in here, and I try to convert this to a date, you get an error because I think 4 million is too much. But if you put, oh, this is not 4 million, this is 40 million. If I put 4 million, it's still too much. And notice that if you put a date that's too big, you're going to get this pound sign error. But let me see, 2 million. So 2 million works. October 23rd, the year 7375. That's 2 million days after January 1st, 1900. So that's how Excel works with dates. Notice that, let me just convert this back. If I go in this cell, because these are formatted as dates, and I go here, equals, let me just put a formula in here, equals this, and then I want to add a fraction. And what do I get? Well, I get January 1st, 1900, but let me just expand this so that I can format these cells as a date with a time attached to it. And now you'll see something weird. Not weird, but something that looks interesting is that here you have January 1st, 1900, and here you have January 1st, 1900, 12 p.m. That 12 p.m. here is coming from this 0.5, because when I told you that Excel stores dates as numbers, it also accounts for fractions. So if you put in 0.25 here, you get 6 a.m. So 6 hours is a quarter of a day, and you could keep sort of doing this. You could put in decimal points and you could play around with this. But all you should notice is that you know Excel is storing dates as numbers, and there's fractions as well. The fractions signify the time of this particular day. Let's do okay. So I think that's sufficient for you to understand that Excel behind the scenes has a numbering system for dates, and it starts at 1, and you can add numbers to that, fractions as well, to indicate portions of a day. Like half a day is 12 hours and a quarter of a day is 6 hours, etc. So you can add whole numbers or fractions to get new days, right? So that's how Excel, that's the date system in Excel. It starts at 1, which is January 1st, 1900, and it goes to, like, 2 million days from there, like the year 73 or 9, it might be 9,000, but at some point it bombed out because I put in 40 million. I put in equals this plus 40 million, just put a bunch of zeros and you get an error. So the system works. I don't know exactly how it works, how big you can go, but that's the gist of the system, is that there's a numbering system, right? Okay, so I hope you understood that. Now we could use all these functions. We'll get into these functions. So what does this today function do? So I sort of constructed this worksheet with a couple headings. So there's a bunch of date functions. If you go up here to formulas and under this date time, you'll see there's tons of these functions. And I sort of constructed this worksheet under a couple different headers. So the first couple functions just return the current date. So if I just put equals today, this function doesn't take any parameters, so there's nothing in between the parentheses. The function, you just put in today, open parentheses, close parentheses, and you get the current day, right? And that'll just give you the current day without the time. It doesn't have the time. If you want the current exact date and time as of right now, then you use this now function. Again, it doesn't take any parameters, just empty. There's nothing between the parentheses. You just hit enter, and what do you get here? You get the current date and the time. So right now it is 9 o'clock, and this is in military time, and I think you could go in here, and if you want to format this a different way, you could do that using all these different formats, right? You just right click and go to custom or go to date or whatever, and you could format all this stuff. So if you want military time or not military time, etc., you right click and go to format and click either date or custom, etc. So you guys can figure that out. But I just want to show you the difference between the today function and the now function. It was, in fact, if I just go down here, and this is the one I choose a lot, is that the today function does not include the current time, whereas this is the current time. It's now, so that's why it's the now function. This is just the today function. Okay, so once we have that, the next category I have for these date functions is, here's a bunch of functions where you can extract components of a date. So if I want to extract the day, just the day, so it's the 23rd today. If I want to extract the number 23, the date, I would put this date function. So the date function asks for a serial number, and that's, again, you could put in a number here. If I put in 1, it's going to return 1, right? Because it's just going to return 1/1/2000 or 1/1/1900, right? Because that's what this date is. If I put this in, it returns 23. Because remember what this is asking here. It's that you don't be confused. This serial number is the number that is the date, right? So if I format this into a number, the actual number that I'm passing in is 40962. So if I go in here, instead of linking it to that cell, if I just put 40962, I get 23. Why is that? Well, that's because in the numbering system of Excel, 40962 is actually stored as, yes, February 23rd, 2012. Okay, so you get what's going on here. Now there's this month function. What does that do? Same thing. You pass in a number, remember that a date is really a number in Excel. So I pass in this date and I get the month of that date, which is February. And then there's a year function. Same thing, you need to pass in a number. Remember that a date is a number. So you can pass in that date and you get the year. So here's functions that will give you the day, the month, and the year. If you want the hour, so it's the same thing. You pass in a date or a number and it'll give you the hour. And you get 0 here because this is stored as, remember, what is the hour of the today function? Well, it is 0, the 0 hour. That's military time. If I change this to do it to the now, so I link it up to this now, result of the now function, I get 21. That's because 9 p.m. is equal to 21 in military time. If I want the minute, I just write this minute function, and I'm going to link it up to now again, and I hit enter, and that's 4. So what does the 4 mean? That means it's the 4th minute, right? If I want second, it's the same thing. So all these functions, day, month, year, hour, minute, second, they're just extracting elements of a date, right? So we're extracting the day, the month, the year, and you could even extract the second. So if I link up the second to now, remember it's asking for a number here. It says give me a number, but you know that by now a number is can be thought of as a date as long as it starts at 1 and it goes up to like 2-3 million or whatever. So I'm gonna hit enter here after I link it to this number stored in B3, which is the result of the now function, and I get 55. One thing about this that's pretty cool is that if you press, oops, let me delete that. If you were to press F9 right now, and I can't because I have something else, when I press F9 something else happens, but if you were to press F9 after you link up the second function to the now function, so exactly what I did, you use the second function around the now function, try it and you'll see that, well, there you go, that it changes, right? So every time I recalculate this by just clicking in the cell and hitting enter, you could see it's going 38 and then it's going 41. And what's happening here is that it's actually keeping track of the seconds of the current time. So if I keep doing this, we're going to get to a point where in the next 5 seconds this is going to change to 9:06. So if I hit this, we're at 59 and now I go back. Okay, now we're at 9:06 in 1 second. So that's how fast this stuff works, is that if you were to link it to the now function, it actually does know the exact second that the exact second that is happening right now. And you could do things with that in applications to keep track of stuff or to make things happen second by second. You could use this second function. Okay, so that's what these functions do, right? They just extract elements of a date. And a date can include a time or it doesn't have to include a time. And remember, you know how to do that. If you want to include a time, it's going to be a number and a fraction, because as we saw, the number 1 is just a date, but then if you put it 1.5, it's like the date at 12 p.m., right? Okay, so what does this weekday function do? If we put weekday, it asks for a number again as a parameter, and then it asks for a return type. So if I put a number in here or a date, now I'm going to speak interchangeably there. If I pass a date to it, I can then put a return type, and I put the date and then comma. So if the return type is 1, that means number 1 is Sunday and number 7 is Saturday. And if you put a return type of 2, the number 1 is a Monday and number 7 is a Sunday. So all this is doing, this weekday, is saying, if I put in return type 1, it's saying that today is a 5. What is a 5? It's a Thursday. Why is it a Thursday? Well, again, if you go back to here, 1 is a Sunday. That would mean that 2 is a Monday. Because I selected 1 here. 1 is a Sunday, 2 is a Monday, 3 is a Tuesday, 4 is a Wednesday, and 5 is a Thursday. 6 is a Saturday, and 7 is a Sunday. Actually, I'm sorry about that. 1 is a Sunday, so that would mean that 5 is a Thursday, which it is today. So all this function does, all Weekday does, is tell you what day, what day of the 7 days in the week you currently have, and you could decide that you want to have Sunday be the first day, or Monday be the first day, or all these other different options here as return type. You could have Friday be the first day here. You could have Sunday be the first day here. Um, you could have, starting at 0 with Monday being a 0 and Sunday being a 6. Just different ways of dealing with the 7 days in the week and you know indexing those days. That's all this does. So play around with that return type. If you want Monday to be the first day, Sunday to be the first day, whatever you want, it's probably possible by just changing this parameter here. But all it does, again, tells you what weekday it is. It doesn't tell you Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, the word. It doesn't return a word. It returns a number. But I'll show you in a second how we can get around that. Week num. What is week num? Same sort of thing. It tells you what week you're in of the current year. Of the year of the date. So if I put in 2/23, 2012, and again you have a return type with Sunday. This is saying the week begins on Sunday. Or here, if you select Monday, the week begins on Monday. So when do you want your week to begin? I'm going to say the week begins on Sunday. So there's a ton of options. What this means, week num, that means 2/23, 2012 is in the 8th week of the year, right? That's all it means. So these are functions that you can play around with that'll tell you what weekday it is, whether it's a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, but it doesn't tell you the text, it tells you a number. But I'll show you in a second again how to get around that. This function week num tells you what week of the year you're in. And then these functions up here, like we saw, extract stuff, parts of the date, and here you get the date by using today or now. Now if you want to construct a date, so let's say you have some columns or something and you want to build a date. Well, this is easy, right? You could just put 2012. Let's say I want to do this 4 and 23. So what this does is it just builds a date from a bunch of numbers. That's all it does. That's very simple. This date function here, you just pass in a year, a month, and a day as numbers. So these are not dates right now. These are just numbers. And it'll build the date for you. That's all it does. What does time do? So if you put time here, this will build a time for you. So now you can build a time. Let's say I want the 16th hour, the 45th minute, and the 34th second. So it just, you pass in numbers and it spits out a time, 4:45 p.m. So that's all these functions do. The date function, the time function. Sometimes you'll need to do that. I mean, it's not very often, but sometimes you might have to. Okay. So now we get down to a workday function. So what does the workday function do? Well, let's just do this. I'm going to put in today over here in this range. Well, actually, I'll do it up here. I'm going to put in the formula today equals today. Actually, no, I should really do it down here because you're going to see it better. I'll put equals today. Then all I want to do is do equals this cell, that date, plus 1. And now I'm just going to drag this down a bit. Let's see what this did. Okay, there we go. Okay, so all I did is I I started with today and I just added 1 to it and just drag that formula down so that I'm just adding a day to the day above it, so that I get, going out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like 11 days or so. Here's a day range, right? What this workday function will do, if I do this workday, if you put in a start date, it will tell you how many work days, or no, it'll tell you what work day it is after, let's say, 5 days. So let's think about this. If I do this uh, work day, and then I pass in the first parameter, which is a start date, and then this days parameter here, I pass in 5. What it's going to do is tell me, if I format this as a date, it's going to tell me that 3/1 is 5 work days from the start date. So let's think about this. I know that this is a Thursday, and I'm going to drag this down. And now we can look at this, right? So let's highlight Saturday and Sunday here, just so you can see what's going on. So here I have my start date in this workday function was 2/23, and I said add 5 days to that, but add 5 work days. That's what this function does. It adds work days to this start date. So 5 work days from here is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 3/1. That's where it's getting this 3/1. It's skipping over the weekends. That's what this workday function does. You give it a start date, it's going to skip over any weekends and go out 5 work days and return that value. So that's 3/1. That's this 3/1 here. It's being returned because it's 5 work days, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, after the start date. So I passed in 2/23, and then I passed in the number 5, and it went out 5 work days, and it returned 3/1. There's also a parameter in here called holidays, and you could tell it's optional because it has these brackets around it. And what that does, let's say I have a list here of holidays, and let's say my holiday this Monday is a holiday. So I'm going to put 2/27 2012. Let me just highlight this again, a different color. So now I have a list of holidays. And let's also make 2/28 a holiday. Why not? So here we have, for some reason, there's holidays. And now you want your workday function to account for that. You want to go out 5 work days, but also to exclude holidays, right? Because we already know it excludes Saturdays and Sundays, as we saw. But now I want to exclude these days. And so to do that, you would just put a comma and then enter the parameter. And the parameter is entered as a range, or you could enter one single day. But I have a bunch of days, so I'm going to put a range here. And now when I click enter, I get a different date. I get 3/5. So let me just equals this plus 1. Okay, so what's going on here? So what do? We said start at 2/23 and find the date that is 5 work days from 2/23, excluding weekends. It automatically excludes weekends. But then I said here with this holidays, exclude these days as well. So let's count this. Here's 1, and then it excludes the weekends. And then it's also going to exclude these 2 days here. So then this would be the second work day. This is the second work day. This is the third work day. This is the fourth work day. Then it excludes the weekends again. Here's Saturday and Sunday. And then the fifth work day is 3/5. So when you hit enter, you get 3/5, right? Because it is excluding these yellow weekends, and it's also excluding these purple holidays. And so what you're left with is, here's 5 work days from 2/23. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So that's all this Workday function does. Net Workday sort of does the same thing, only it returns the number of workdays between a start date and an end date. So what this is asking for when you open the parentheses is a start date. Okay, so I'll put in 223, and an end date, and I'll put in 3/6. And then it's automatically again going to exclude weekends. So if we just do this, it returns the number 9. So this says between the start date and end date of 223 and 3/6, there's 9 work days. And let's count them. Notice that we're not doing these holidays in this case. In a second we'll do that, but let's just count the work days now. 1 is this Friday, 2 is this Monday, 3 Tuesday, 4 Wednesday, 5 6 7 8. Actually, this is inclusive of the start date, so it's actually including the start date and end date. So 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9. So that's 9. There's 9 work days that are not weekends here. And then if I want to say, well, also don't include the holidays, and if you have a range of holidays that you have. Now this is something that you have to supply, these holidays. You have to, just like I did, you have to enter a range of dates and say, here are my holidays, exclude them. When you hit enter, you'll go from 9 down to 7. And why is that? That's because now you're starting here and you're ending here, and you're excluding weekends, but you're also excluding these 2 days. So then you get 1 2 3 4 5 and then 6 7. You're excluding these 2 days. So that's how the net work days works. And now let's look at a couple more functions real quick. This EO month. So all this does is gives you the last day of the month. So if I go up here and I say 223, that's my start date. That's the date that I want to find what is the end of the month of that start date. But then you can say, how many months do you want to go from that start date? So if I put in 0 here, I get, let me just format these dates. If I put in 0, I get 229. Why is that? That's because I passed in a start date of 223, and I don't want to add any months to it. So it's gonna look at the month of February, and it's gonna find the last date in February, which is 229. If I put in 1, it's going to look at 223 and then go to the next month, because I added 1 here. It goes to the next month, and then it finds the last date of that month, which is 3/31. If I put in 2, it's gonna go to 223. It's gonna add 2 months, so it'll go to April, and it'll find the last day in April. That's what this EO month does. E-date sort of does the same thing. You enter a start date, and you just enter the number of months that you want that date returned. So if I enter 0, I get the same date. So this is different, right? This is actually finding the last day in some month, right? Starting from some start date. Whereas this one, it's going to return, if I put in 1 here, it's going to return the same date but a different month. So here you're adding months, right? If I put in 16, it's still going to return 23. It's just going to add 16 months. So if I go around and do 12, you'll see I went 12 months from 223 because I passed in 223, and all this function does, eDate, is go 12 months forward and return the same date. So there's 223 of the next year, 2013 versus 2012. Whereas this EO month function, I think you guys have seen, you know what that does by now. Okay, so that's it for this tab. And this tab is, if you want to understand dates in Excel, I think this tab does a good job. It reminds you that you are dealing with numbers when you're actually dealing with dates, because dates are stored as numbers, and you can enter a number with a fractional component. So you could have 1.5 or 4,000 and 4,000.75, and that's going to be 0.75 of a day, and we saw that here, right? Then we saw all these functions to get the current date. You use today. To get the date and the time of exactly right now, you use now, the now function. These functions extract elements, the date and the time. Those are where you can pass in numbers and it'll return a date or it'll return a time. Then the workdays was pretty cool. It could find the next workday and it could deal with holidays and the network days. It could count the number of work days between the start date and end date and also deal with the holidays. And then this EO month and E date, they sort of give you the ability to find the end of a month, what's the last date of a certain month, or this E date says take the current date I give you and go out 30 months and give me what date that would be. So real quick, let me do something here. I want to create a mapping table real quick. I want to create a table that has the numbers 1 through 7 in it. And then I want to put the words Monday. And what I want to do here is show you how we're going to link to this table and we're going to return something. So here's we're going to use this weekday function. And I'll show you how to do that right now. So here we have some random data, right? And over here, we say we took a survey of these people and we put down the date that we took the survey. But I want to know if that date was on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday. So over here, I have this column, day of week the survey was taken. So what I can do is go over here and I can use this weekday function. And we saw what it does, right? I can go back here. I could enter this date. So now I have, there's my date. I start with Sunday being a 1 and actually I did Monday being a 1. So I want this to be 2. I want this to be 2 because on my mapping table I had over here, remember? I had Monday being a 1 here. So when Monday's a 1, that means Sunday's a 7. So back here, I'm showing you how to do this in the real world, is I made this a 2 because when I press comma, Monday is a 1 right here and Sunday is a 7. And that's exactly how my mapping table is set up. So now I know that, okay, this was a Monday, right? But I want it to say Monday. So what you can do now is you can put a big if statement like if weekday is equal to 1 then Monday, right? But there's a better way to do that. Let's look up VLOOKUP. Let's look up this value, right? Because if you don't know what VLOOKUP is, go watch the video on it. So we're going to look up this value, which is going to be a number, in this table, right? And I want to make sure I have it locked down. Oops, I gotta close this again. For some reason it doesn't work. So I'm going to lock this table down by putting the dollar signs to make an absolute reference. And then I'm going to say I want the second column. And then I want an exact match. So if you don't know what VLOOKUP is, go watch the video. And there you go. Using VLOOKUP and the weekday function, I can now say what day of the week was the survey taken. So that's pretty cool. And if I just drag this down, I get Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So now I know that, let's say this Wednesday is what it's doing is it's going over here and looking at this date, 1/4/2012, and it's applying the weekday function to get a number between 1 and 7, and then I'm looking up that number 1 through 7 on this range, and I'm returning the second column, which is the text Monday through Sunday. So let me just do a couple of other things that you would do in the real world. Let's say you need the year that something was done in, just like we have this date over here. I would use the year function. So over here I would select this J6, but I would wrap the year function around it, because maybe you want to know of this survey what year it was taken, and that's useful information. So now you have the year, and now let's look at this. Because we know that Excel stores dates as numbers, you might need to know how long has it been since the survey was taken. So what you could do is use the today function. You could do today minus, and then you just select that date, minus J6. So here's what the formula looks like. Equals today minus J6. And you're going to get a number. So I want the number of this. I don't want it to be a date. Let's see, just number general, 150. That's cool. So that means there was 150 days between the time that this survey was taken and today. You might need to know that for whatever reason. Let's look at this negative number here. If I go over here, that must mean I have a problem with my date, and that's because the date I have over here is not really a good date to have over here. Let's put 219 instead. So notice that it worked though. You had a negative number. If the date is bigger than what's going on here? Let me copy this down. If you had a number bigger than today, it would give you a negative number. So you could see, obviously, it's dealing with numbers when you're dealing with dates. Now I have a 4 here because I chose a date just like 4 days ago, right? So that's how it'll tell you the day since the entry. So now, working with these date functions is pretty powerful because you can do things like this. You can create a mapping table like I did over here of 1 through 7, Monday to Sunday, and you can VLOOKUP off of the weekday of a date, and you could do the same thing for month, or you could do the same thing for month. Like you can create a mapping table for January to December, and then 1 to 12, and then when the month returns a number, you just map it the same way. So that's it for this video. I wanted to show you all these functions. And do you need to know all of them? Probably not, but what ones are the most important? Well, these two are very important here. These are very important here. The weekday and week num are very important. I would say weekday is very important. Week num, not so much. Doing this, at some point in time, you're probably going to need it, so this is important. And then this, both of these are pretty important. These two, not so much. So I would say these, along with the ones that extract parts of the date, and then the ones that get the current date and now. And then the other big thing is to know this whole return type when you specify 1 or 2, that Monday is a 1 and Sunday is a 7, and all that stuff that we saw when we did this, right? That's the other thing to know, is that what is going to be the first day of the week? Is it going to be Sunday or Monday or Tuesday? Is it going to start with 1 or 0? Go from 0 to 6 or 1 to 7? All these different options. It's good to know. And then the other thing that's good to know is just a simple fact that you're dealing with numbers. When you're dealing with dates in Excel, you really are dealing with numbers, and you're dealing with fractions as well, because if you want you want today at 12 noon, you can get that by putting 0.5 onto the current date, right? So it's really good to know that, and it's also good to know when the dates start. It starts at January 1st, 1900. So that's it for this video. I'm going to take this workbook and upload it to the website. And remember, if you're not familiar with Excel, this is a great workbook, and all the videos that have been posted show you how to do everything in Excel, dealing with all the functions, how to use real world data like this, and then you can watch all the videos, and you could download the file if you want. And if you want to take it further and learn VBA, there's more than 15 hours of video on programming with macros so you can really save time. Go to Excel VBA SQL, watch the videos, enter your email. Until then, you could contact me here. I'll talk to you guys later.